Hey, it's Mr. Hayashi with 2.6 geometry. We're talking about some theorems, postulates, and then proving some geometric relationships. So we've talked about what a postulate is. A postulate is just a statement that cannot be proven true. And I'm pretty sure we at least mentioned what a theorem is. I don't think I've defined it for you. A theorem is just a statement that can be proven true. And then kind of like with our postulates, even though I have the theorems numbered, don't worry too much about the numbers of the theorems. You do want to know what the theorem name is, what the theorem states, and then how to apply the theorem. So theorem 2.3 is the right angles congruence theorem, and then the right angles congruence theorem. So first of all, the right angles congruence theorem is the name, but the right angles congruence theorem states all right angles are congruent. And that should make sense. All right angles are 90 degrees. All 90 degrees measures are equal, which makes all right angles congruent. Sometimes, especially if we get to it in proofs, whether we're talking about two-column proofs or any other kind of proofs, paragraph proofs, flow proofs, we use abbreviations or acronyms. So instead of having to write out all right angles are congruent, sometimes we use the acronym or abbreviation ARAC, all right angles are congruent. Okay. It's the same thing, it's just not having to write out the full statement each time. But like I said, if I have just two right angles, I could have three, I could have four. Say this is angle A. If it's a right angle, I could put that little square in the corner. That means that this angle measures 90 degrees. If I have a second angle, angle B, and if that measure is 90 degrees, these two angles are congruent. If I have a third angle, that's a right angle, that angle would be congruent as well. So I think it's pretty basic, should make sense if you kind of think about it a little bit. All right, and then theorem 2.4, the congruence supplements theorem. So previously we talked about conditional statements, even though I didn't write theorem 2.3 as a conditional statement. Quite a few theorems, postulates, definitions that we'll go over, we'll use conditional statements. So the congruence supplements theorem states if two angles are supplementary to the same angle, you have to remember what supplementary angles are, just a quick refresher, or maybe pause, think about it. Supplementary angles are two angles whose sum is 180 degrees. But if two angles are supplementary to the same angle, or it could be the two angles are supplementary to congruent angles, then again, possibly pause the video and think about what the relationship between those two angles are that are supplementary to the same angle. I actually should put the parentheses here. Let me change that. If you thought about it, then those two angles would have to be congruent. Let's take a look at a quick example here. So if I have two angles that are supplementary to the same angle, so let's start with just one angle. I'm going to make it an obtuse angle. I'm going to call it angle A. And let's just say angle A is 120 degrees. So if I have one angle that's supplementary to this, the measure of that second angle, I'm going to call that angle B would have to be, think about it, maybe even say it in your head or say it out loud. If you said 60 degrees, that would be correct. I'm going to try to draw this somewhat to scale, even though I'm not using a protractor here. But angle B, 60 degrees. Measure of angle B plus measure of angle A, 60 degrees plus 120 degrees is 180. These two angles are supplementary. And if I have a third angle, call it angle C. That's also supplementary to this angle A. It would also have to be 60 degrees. So I said there, this is angle C, 60 degrees. This is supplementary to angle A. So here's your two angles, C and B. They're supplementary to this same angle, angle A. Therefore, by these two angles or those two angles are congruent, we're talking about angles C and B. Each of them measure 60 degrees. So if these two angles are supplementary to the same angle, then the angles are congruent. Angle C, let me just write it out so you remember the correct way to write it. Angle C is congruent to, the little squiggly mark on top of the equal sign is the symbol for congruent to angle B. If I had another angle, like angle D, if angle D is 120 degrees, then both angles C and angles B would be supplementary to angles A and angle D. So they would be supplementary to the congruent angles. So that's why I put or congruent angles in the parentheses there.